Amelia Turner had just turned 19, her eyes bright with the dreams of a university freshman. She was studying business administration at a mid-sized university in Chicago, paying her tuition through part-time jobs. Her parents had passed away when she was a child, leaving her to grow up with an aunt who could barely afford rent. Despite her struggles, Amelia believed that life had something beautiful waiting for her. That something came in the form of Ethan Montgomery. Ethan was the kind of man everyone noticed, all effortlessly confident, an heir to one of the biggest real estate fortunes in Illinois. They met at a university charity event. Amelia had been working at the reception desk, while Ethan arrived in a tailored suit. Their first conversation was casual, but Ethan was drawn to her intelligence more than her beauty. Over the next few months, they saw each other often coffee dates, walks by Lake Michigan, evenings talking about their ambitions. Amelia felt like she had found the missing piece in her life. When Ethan proposed under the sparkling Christmas lights of Millennium Park, she didn't hesitate to say yes. The wedding was like something out of a movie. White roses, a live jazz band, and a guest list full of Chicago's elite. Amelia wore a gown that made her look like a princess. For a girl who once counted coins for bus fare, it felt like a dream that couldn't be broken. But dreams can shatter faster than glass. On the second day after their wedding, Ethan handed her a single sheet of paper, divorce papers. He didn't explain much, only muttered that he had made a mistake. Amelia's world collapsed in an instant. She left his mansion with nothing but her wedding dress stuffed into a plastic bag. Her aunt refused to take her back, fearing neighborhood gossip. She rented a small, damp apartment in a part of town most people avoided. Every time she stepped outside, she felt eyes following her, whispers, smirks, pity. Gold digger, some called her. Poor thing, others said. But no one helped. She cried at night, her tears soaking the thin pillow. But one cold January morning, Amelia looked at herself in the cracked mirror and whispered, "I will not die like this." That was the day everything began to change. Amelia didn't have money, but she had a mind sharp enough to cut through steel. She began researching small businesses that could grow into something big. Her part-time jobs in cafes and stores had taught her how customers think, how products sell, and how to manage small finances. She started selling handmade candles from her apartment, pouring wax late into the night. At first, she made only a few sales a week, enough to buy groceries, but not much more. She used social media to post pictures of her candles, writing heartfelt captions about resilience and hope. People began to notice not just the product, but the girl behind it. Within 6 months, her candle business had grown enough for her to rent a small workshop. She learned about suppliers, packaging, and bulk orders by reading free online courses. Failure hit her many times, shipments delayed, materials ruined, orders returned. But Amelia refused to quit. She worked 16-hour days, her hands often blistered from handling hot wax. Her determination caught the attention of a local investor, who offered her a small loan. She used it wisely, hiring 2 employees and expanding her product line to include soaps and essential oils. Within 3 years, Amelia had moved from a tiny workshop to a full-scale factory. The building stood proudly in an industrial district, painted white and gold, the colors of her brand. Her company, Luminescence, became one of the fastest-growing lifestyle brands in Illinois. Magazines called her the Candle Queen of Chicago. Her products were sold in big retail chains, and she employed over 100 people. Amelia often walked through the factory floors, greeting workers by name. She never forgot what it felt like to be invisible, so she made sure no one working for her felt that way. But success didn't erase the scars. She still remembered Ethan, his face, his betrayal, the humiliation. She didn't hate him anymore. She had outgrown him, or at least, she thought she had. Because one rainy afternoon, she walked into her office and found his name on a job application. Ethan Montgomery wanted to work for her. The same man who had thrown her away now needed her to survive, and fate had just put the power in her hands. Amelia stared at the resume for a long time, her fingers frozen over the paper. Ethan's once polished name was now typed in a plain font, attached to a modest work history. The Montgomery fortune, she later learned, had collapsed after a series of failed investments. His father's company had gone bankrupt, and the lavish lifestyle disappeared overnight. He had been unemployed for almost a year. When her HR manager asked if they should process his application, Amelia simply said, "Call him in." The next day, Ethan walked into the interview room wearing a cheap suit that didn't quite fit. He looked thinner, older, and far more nervous than she remembered. "Amelia," he said softly, his voice almost breaking. She didn't smile. "Mr. Montgomery, please have a seat." The formal tone made his jaw tighten, but he obeyed. For 30 minutes, she asked him technical questions about supply chains, production schedules, and team management. He answered carefully, but she could see the shame in his eyes. At the end, she stood up, extended her hand, and said, "You're hired." He blinked, clearly not expecting her to accept him. The first few weeks were awkward. They barely spoke beyond work-related matters. Ethan kept his head down, following orders like any other employee. But Amelia noticed something different. He worked hard, almost desperately. He stayed late, volunteered for extra tasks, and treated the factory workers with respect. One evening, as she was locking her office, she found him mopping the break room floor. "You're the boss," he said when she asked why. "If I'm going to work for you, I want to do it right." His humility unsettled her. This wasn't the Ethan she once knew. Slowly, small conversations returned about the business, about life. He never once asked for forgiveness, and she never offered it. But there was an unspoken current between them, as if both were waiting for the other to speak first. And then came the night that changed everything. It was the company's 5th anniversary celebration, held at a grand hotel ballroom. The factory team, investors, and partners were all there, dressed in formal attire. Amelia wore an emerald green gown that turned every head in the room. Ethan, in a perfectly tailored black suit this time, stood among the employees, quietly watching her. During her speech, Amelia thanked everyone for believing in her when no one else did. Her voice caught for a moment as she recalled the early days of struggle. Ethan's eyes softened, and for the first time in years, she saw genuine regret in them. After the event, as the guests left, he approached her on the empty dance floor. "I was a coward," he said quietly. Amelia tilted her head. "That's one way to describe it. I thought money made me powerful. I thought marrying you was a mistake because you didn't come from my world. And now?" she asked. "Now I know you're the only person who ever truly loved me," he replied. Silence hung between them, heavy but not suffocating. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple gold ring knot, flashy but beautiful in its honesty. "I'm not the man I was," he said. "I have nothing but myself to offer. But I want to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you." Amelia looked at the ring, then at him. Years ago, she would have said yes instantly. Now, she weighed the choice with the wisdom pain had taught her. Finally, she smiled faintly. "If you want to be in my life again, you start as my partner in business and in everything else." He nodded, relief washing over his face. They shook hands, sealing an agreement that was more than professional. For Amelia, this wasn't about revenge or pity. It was about reclaiming her story and her terms, and maybe, just maybe, about rewriting the ending they never got right the first time. Over the next year, Amelia and Ethan worked side by side in the factory office. They argued, laughed, disagreed, and celebrated victories like true business partners. Ethan proved himself not with grand gestures, but with quiet consistency, showing up early, staying late, and protecting the company's interests as if they were his own. Amelia saw the pride in his eyes when they secured a major contract with a national retail chain. One afternoon, while reviewing sales reports, she noticed his handwriting on a note. "Thank you for giving me a second chance at life." It made her pause, realizing how far they had both come. The gossip that once followed her had vanished. Now, people in Chicago spoke her name with respect. Young women looked to her as an example of strength and independence. And Ethan, once the man who left her, was now the man who stood beside her, not above her. On a crisp autumn evening, after a long work day, Ethan asked her to walk with him by the Chicago River. The city lights reflected on the water, shimmering like scattered gold. He stopped, took her hands, and said, "This time, there's no mansion, no guest list, no champagne, just us." Amelia's lips curved into a soft smile. "That's all I ever wanted." He slipped the same simple gold ring onto her finger, the one he had offered a year ago. Only now, she accepted it without hesitation. They married in a small ceremony at her aunt's modest home, with only close friends and employees present. Instead of a white gown, she wore a cream suit, a symbol of the woman she had become. There was no fairy tale this time, just real life, messy and beautiful. After the vows, they returned to the factory to celebrate with the workers. Laughter, music, and the scent of candles filled the air. Amelia looked around and felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Her life had not gone the way she once imagined, but in the end, it had become something better. Not because she married a rich man, but because she became a rich woman in spirit, strength, and success. And as Ethan held her hand, she knew this time, the story wouldn't break. This time, it was theirs to keep.